I always imagined my old age would be peaceful. Tea in the mornings, quiet afternoons, grandchildren running through the yard. Instead, I woke up one day to realize I was a prisoner in my own home, owned by my own children. They said it was for my safety. They lied. My name is Lillian, though everybody used to call me Lily. These days my children call me Mom, the way people say problems, something to be handled, contained, kept from spilling onto the carpet. I'm 67 years old, widow, former nurse. I've stitched drunk men's faces back together at 3 in the morning, delivered twins in a snowstorm when the obstetrician got stuck on the highway, and once performed CPR on a 30-pound truck driver in the middle of the Piggly Wiggly. I am not delicate. I am not helpless. But you wouldn't know that from the way my children talk about me at parties. Mom's fragile now, my daughter Claire will say, lowering her voice and widening her eyes, like she's talking about some antique teacup. We just worry, you know? Stairs, scams, falls. It's not safe for her to manage everything alone anymore. They nod. These strangers. They cluck their tongues, pat my shoulder, and look at me the way people look at old dogs, sad, apologetic, already halfway to goodbye. If only they knew. It started, officially, with what they called the family meeting. I should have known from the capital letters. Claire arrived first, in her black SUV, the one she says she needs for the kids but never seems to have any kids in. She swept into my kitchen with the smell of expensive perfume and mild disapproval. "Hi, Mom," she said, kissing the air near my cheek. "You left your back screen door unlocked again." "Anyone could have walked right in." "Anyone did," I said, reaching past her for the kettle. "Want tea?" She sighed, the way she always does when I answer her nonsense with something that isn't pure gratitude. She started rearranging things on the counter, my sugar jar, my salt, my little ceramic rooster. Claire can't be in a room without trying to redecorate it. My son, Daniel, showed up 10 minutes later with a stack of folders under his arm like a nervous salesman. He kissed me too, distractedly, his mouth already moving. "Hey, Mom, we need to talk about a couple of things." "Nothing bad," he added quickly, as if that ever meant anything good. "Just logistics." Logistics. My children started using words like that when they stepped into their 40s. Logistics, boundaries, cognitive decline, all those fancy syllables to dress up their guilt. I sat at my kitchen table, at the head, because it was my house and my table and I was still alive. They sat across from me like an intervention panel. I half expected them to hold up cue cards. Claire folded her manicured hands. "We're worried about you." Ah, there it was. Worried. That word used to mean, I care about you. With them, it meant, we're about to do something you won't like and we'd prefer you smiled through it. What brought this on? I asked, pouring my tea. My hands didn't even tremble. I was petty enough to be proud of that. Daniel spread out his folders, neat little stacks of betrayal. "Mom, you fell in the garden last month." "I tripped over the hose," I said. "I'm old, Daniel, not drunk. And you gave your bank information to that telemarketer." Claire jumped in. "You told me yourself." I hung up on him, I corrected. "But go on, don't let accuracy slow you down." Daniel forced a chuckle, the kind that means he's about to steamroll you. "Mom, we've talked to your doctor." That made me sit up. "You what?" "Dr. Keene," Claire said. "We mentioned our concerns. The forgetfulness. The impulsive spending. The forgetfulness. Because I once put my milk in the pantry and the cereal in the fridge." News flash. I did that at 32. As for impulsive spending, they meant the recliner I bought so my back wouldn't scream every night, and the trip to Savannah I'd booked with my church friends that they'd sighed about for 2 weeks. "He says it's normal aging," Daniel went on, "but he also said it would be smart to get ahead of things, just in case there's decline later." "Get ahead of things how?" I asked, though I already knew I wasn't going to like the answer. Claire slid a glossy folder toward me. On the cover was a stock photo of a smiling gray-haired couple walking on a beach. Underneath, family trusts and protective arrangements for loved ones. I stared at it. Somewhere inside, something cold slid into place. "It's just a formality," Claire said quickly. "We set up a trust, transfer the house into it, consolidate your accounts, and make us joint signers. That way if anything happens, we can handle everything. No probate, no confusion, no chance of me changing my mind?" I asked. "No, Mom," Daniel said, "too fast. Of people taking advantage of you." He said it like he wasn't the one sitting at my table with a pen already uncapped. "Let me be honest, I didn't read it. Not all 43 pages. I read the first page, where it said Lillian May Harper and my address. The little white house with the blue shutters that Frank and I bought 42 years ago for $38,000 and painted ourselves. The place where we buried our dog, where I'd brought both my children home from the hospital, where I had memorized the creaks in every floorboard. I read the phrase for her safety in the recital clause for the safety, well-being, and efficient management of the grantor's person and estate, and my fingers tighten. But I didn't yet know enough to be afraid of those words. I skimmed the bits where they were named co-trustees, and where it said something about them having full power to sell, convey, mortgage, invest, and otherwise manage my assets. That tugged at my gut like a warning. But they were smiling at me as if I were a toddler being offered a Band-Aid. "Mom," Claire said softly, reaching across the table, putting her hand over mine. "This is just grown-up paperwork. Everybody does it now. Remember when Aunt Judy didn't have anything set up and we had to go through all that mess in court? We're trying to avoid that. We don't want some stranger making decisions for you," Daniel added. "This just makes it official that it's us." Somewhere in there, I heard the truth they didn't say. "We don't want you making decisions for you either." "I don't want to give away my house," I said. My voice sounded too small in my own kitchen. "You're not giving it away," Daniel said immediately, soothing. "You're just putting it in a protective bubble." "Oh, for good's sake, Daniel," I said. "I was changing your dirty diapers while you were still a concept. Don't explain the world to me like I'm an idiot." He flinched, but only slightly. Claire squeezed my hand, harder now. "You're not an idiot, Mom. We know that. That's why we want to do this now, while everyone agrees and no one can say there was any confusion later." While everyone agrees. By everyone, they meant them. "Mom," Claire murmured, dropping her voice to that pitying register she uses when she wants something. "If you don't sign and then something happens, the state can get involved. We might have to go to court. They could appoint a guardian who doesn't know you. Is that what you want?" There it was, the threat dressed up as concern. "Is that what you want?" No. What I wanted was Frank back, alive and grouchy, sitting at the head of the table and telling them where they could put their forms. But Frank was gone, and it was 2 against 1, and I hadn't slept well in weeks because my hip had turned into a weather vane. And beneath all my suspicion and anger, there was this silly, stubborn thing. I still believed my children loved me. So I signed. Once, twice, 15 times. Every signature felt like pulling a root out of my own chest. When it was done, Daniel gathered the papers quickly like someone who worried I might change my mind and snatched them back. Claire kissed my cheek. "You won't regret this, Mom," she whispered. She was right, actually. It's very hard to regret something when you're busy planning revenge, but that came later. First came the slow boil. The changes started small, which is how abusers like to do it. Boil the frog nice and gentle so she doesn't realize the water's killing her. The first thing to go was my car. "We're just worried about your reaction time," Daniel said, dangling my car keys in front of me like a prize and then slipping them into his pocket. "Insurance is a nightmare for senior drivers, Mom. If anything happened, they'd say we should have taken the keys." "You hit a mailbox, Daniel," I said, in broad daylight. "At 26, nobody took your keys." "That was different," he muttered. "It was my mailbox," I added. "And you broke my begonias. I sent you the bill, remember?" Claire laughed, but it was tight at the edges. "Why do you need to drive, Mom? We're 5 minutes away. We can take you wherever you want to go." That sounded loving, considerate, until I realized wherever I want to go needed 3 days' notice and a signed permission slip. "We'll set up an Uber account on your phone," Claire said, as if I hadn't been using a smartphone since she was still printing MapQuest directions. "But just for approved places, okay? Groceries, doctor, church. No more random trips." Random trips. That's what she called my Thursdays at the senior center, my occasional yard sale adventures, my visits to my friend Marlene to towns over. Random. I found out about the approved places 2 days later, when I tried to call a ride to Marlene's and the app told me destination not permitted. My phone buzzed 30 seconds later. It was Claire. "Mom, why are you trying to go so far?" she asked. "No hello. You didn't tell us." "Because I am an adult woman," I said, "and I have been scheduling my own movements for 67 years. Don't be dramatic," she said. "We just need to know where you are in case something happens. Something like independence, maybe." Then came the cameras. "Just a doorbell camera," Daniel said, holding the little white gadget like a miracle. "We can see if anyone suspicious comes to the door. He installed one on the front porch, then one over the back door just in case. He put a motion sensor in the hallway for falls and a little blinking thing in the kitchen so we'll know if you're okay when you're cooking. You going to put one in the bathroom too? I asked. So you can monitor my bowel movements? Real quality family bonding. Mom, he snapped. Nobody's trying to spy on you. 3 weeks later, I got a text at 9:07 p.m. Why are you in the kitchen this late? I stared at it, then at the open fridge. Because I got hungry, I said out loud to an empty room. Is there a curfew on sandwiches now? When I didn't respond fast enough, my phone rang. Claire, Mom, you know you're not supposed to eat after 8, she said. Your blood sugar, my blood sugar has been mine for 67 years, I said. We have a pretty good relationship. If I want a slice of leftover meatloaf at 9 o'clock, I don't think that counts as self-harm. I'm just worried, she said, and I could hear the clink of wine glasses in the background, laughter that didn't include me. She was at a restaurant probably, watching me on her phone between cocktails. You worry a lot, I said. You should take up yoga. She hung up in a huff. It got uglier after that, subtle, but uglier. They changed my bank account password for security reasons, then stopped giving it to me. Just tell us what you need, Daniel said. We'll handle it. I'd spent my whole life handling it, paying the bills, balancing the checkbook, stretching Frank's mechanic's paycheck and my night shift nursing wages into ballet lessons and soccer cleats and braces. Now I had to ask my son for my own money. Your pension and social security go straight into the trust account now, he explained one afternoon, clicking away on his laptop at my kitchen table without asking if he could set up office there. We've consolidated everything. It's more efficient, yes, for them. What if I want to see the statements? I asked. He smiled, the way you smile at a particularly slow dog. We'll show you, Mom, but you know it's complicated. Lot of numbers. We don't want you getting confused. Lot of numbers, I repeated slowly. I was a charge nurse on the cardiac floor, Daniel. I did drug calculations at a M while a man tried to die on me. I think I can handle checking if Walgreens double charged me for my arthritis cream. I'm not saying you're stupid, he said, still smiling. Just that it's easier if we streamline things, stupid. He didn't say it, but he let it float there between us. That's the thing about emotional abuse, it's rarely just one big explosion. It's 1,000 little cuts. A sigh here, a pitying look there, the word already tacked onto every sentence. You already told us that, Mom. You already asked that. You're already forgetting things. You start to question yourself. Maybe I am slipping. Maybe I should just let them handle it. Maybe it's better this way. And then one day you wake up and realize you don't know your own bank balance. You don't own the house you clean every Saturday for 40 years, and you need permission to go buy your own damn socks. That day for me was a Tuesday in March. I went to buy a birthday card. That's all. A birthday card for my friend Marlene. A simple errand I'd done 1,000 times. I walked into the drugstore, picked out a card with a cartoon cat in sunglasses. She loves those stupid cats, and a little box of chocolates. When I handed the cashier my debit card, she slid it and frowned. It's not going through, she said. Try again, I said. There should be plenty in there. She tried again, then shook her head. Declined. The people behind me shifted, impatient. My cheeks burned. I dug into my purse and pulled out the little bit of cash I kept for emergencies. Apparently, greeting cards are emergencies now. When I got home, I called Daniel. Oh yeah, he said. About that. We closed your personal checking account last month. You closed my account? I said, very carefully. Relax, Mom. Everything's in the trust account now. We talked about this. You talked, I said. I remembered standing in my kitchen signing papers I didn't read because I thought my children loved me, you little weasel. I did not agree to be put on an allowance. Of course, that's exactly what they had in mind. We're not giving you an allowance, Daniel said. We're just budgeting. You'll have access to a set amount each week. We'll transfer it to a card for you. That way we can make sure you're not overspending or getting scammed. What's a set amount? I asked. $200. 200, I laughed, stunned. When your father and I were broke, that was one thing. But I have a pension. I have savings. We're not broke. We just don't want you burning through it, he said. You'll live a long time, Mom. We have to make sure the money lasts. I closed my eyes. There it was again. You'll live a long time, said with the same tone you use for, this stain will never come out. How much is in that account? I asked. Don't worry about it, he said. Wrong answer. I'd like to say I sprang into action right then, marching to some lawyer's office and setting the world on fire. But I didn't. Because abuse, even the polite, middle class, for your safety kind, gets into your bones. It slows you down. It whispers that you're being unreasonable, ungrateful, dramatic. So for a while, I did what a lot of women do. I shrank. I stopped arguing about the cameras. I stopped asking about the bank account. I stopped telling them when I went for walks, just to avoid the barrage of text messages. Where are you? Why did you leave? Make sure to take your phone. Don't forget your ID. My friends stopped visiting as often. At first, it was because I pulled back, embarrassed. Then it was because Claire started screening my calls. Mom's resting, she'd tell them. She gets confused with too much stimulation. Confused. Me, the woman who used to juggle 3 residents, 1 doctor with a God complex, and a code blue alarm at the same time. At church, people started giving me that heavy sympathy look. My pastor asked gently if I felt safe at home. I almost laughed. Safe from whom? I wanted to ask. Me, or the 2 predators who live 5 minutes away with my house deed in their safe? You want to know when the switch flipped? When it went from hurt to rage to cold, clear purpose. It wasn't when my card got declined. It wasn't even when I caught Claire going through my mail to check for scams. It was when my granddaughter, Ava, came over one Sunday, plopped herself on my couch with her tablet, and said casually, "Mom says it's hard having a parent who's declining." Declining. Like I was a building with faulty plumbing. Is that so? I asked, my voice steady. What else does your mom say? Ava shrugged, eyes still on her screen. Just that you're kind of a handful now. But they have to keep you at home because otherwise people might think they're bad children. Then she went back to her game. I sat there, staring at my own hands, at the veins and wrinkles and little brown spots. I thought of every diaper I'd changed, every lunch I'd packed, every night I'd stayed awake so a feverish child could sleep. I thought, you raised them, Lil. You taught them how to be decent. And now they're using that moral language like camouflage while they strip mine your life. And then another thought. They think you're powerless. They think you're stupid. They think you're alone. That was the moment I stopped shrinking. Revenge, my dear, is like baking bread. You don't just throw flour at the wall and call it a loaf. It takes time, patience, and the right temperature. Step 1. Information. They thought keeping me away from the statements meant keeping me away from the truth. They forgot something important. I may be old, but I am very, very nosy. For years I'd been the family archivist. Birth certificates, marriage licenses, tax returns, if it had a date and a signature, I had a copy. Most of that was still in the file cabinet in my bedroom. What they had was the new paperwork, the trust documents, the new bank information, whatever else they'd cooked up while I was recovering from signing my rights away. So I started paying attention, not the panicked, confused attention they thought I was capable of. The cool, clinical attention of a woman who has sat next to too many deathbeds and knows exactly how fast a heartbeat can go from steady to flatline. When Daniel brought his laptop over to pay your bills, Mom, I watched which website he went to. I watched how he typed the password 10 characters, 2 capitalized, 1 number at the end. Old habits from nursing kicked in. I'd spent decades memorizing medication dosages and room numbers. A string of letters and numbers was child's play. When Claire opened the safe in my bedroom to organize your documents, I watched which numbers she spun the dial to. I watched how she tilted her head slightly at the last turn, the way Frank always did when he opened the cookie jar he thought I didn't know about. When they handed me things to sign, just this consent form for your new insurance, just this authorization for your doctor to talk to us, I took my time. I read the headings. I noted the names of the law firm on the top of the trust documents, Wexler and Tate, elder law specialists. I wrote that down later, on a post-it, stuck it inside an old cookbook I knew Claire would never open because it had lard in half the recipes. I kept a notebook, just a little spiral thing with a floral cover that said "Blessed" in curly script. Very harmless. Inside, I wrote everything. March 9th, 3:12 p.m. Claire says, "Mom, you already told us that." When I asked what happened to my Sears credit card, I never asked before. Has she started lying casually, or have I misremembered? March 16th, 10:45 am. Daniel paid bill on laptop. Website, First Pioneer Financial. Account ending in 7754. Name on top, Harper Family Revocable Living Trust. Balance, $418,000. I only saw that number for a second, a glimpse, when he turned the screen toward me to show off his spreadsheet. But that was enough. 418,000. I'd expected less. After all the were worried about you spending too fast. Interesting. Step 2. Education. I wasn't about to charge into a lawyer's office waving a notebook and pure indignation. I needed to know what legally they'd done and what legally I could do. Of course, I couldn't just Google how to sue your ungrateful children from my own phone. Daniel checked my search history for scams now. So I found an old-fashioned solution. The library. Claire hates libraries, says they smell like dust and regret, so I told her I'd joined a senior book club at church that met Thursday mornings. She beamed, because this fit her narrative of me, a harmless old woman gently decaying over tea and scripture. In reality, I took the senior sender shuttle to the public library and walked straight to the computer area. Now, you want to see something adorable? Watch a 20-something librarian try to explain the internet to a woman who's been using Excel since before he was born. I'm good, honey, I told him. I just need a browser and the print button. I searched. Elder financial abuse signs. Undue influence adult children trust. Revoking living trust confidence requirements. What I found made my stomach turn and my jaw clench. Stories just like mine. Parents told they were confused when they objected. Kids using safety and efficiency as crowbars to pry open bank accounts. Lawyers who specialized in either helping them do it or undoing the damage afterward. I printed everything. Case summaries, checklists, a state-issued brochure titled Know Your Rights, Protecting Yourself from Financial Exploitation. It had a cheery cartoon of an old man and woman walking into the sunset, which I found offensive on a spiritual level but useful on a legal one. I tucked the papers into a manila folder and wrote, in big red letters, recipes. Then I put one actual recipe on top my pecan pie in case anyone got nosy. Step 3. Allies. If you've lived long enough, you learn 2 things. 1. Men die. 2. Women remember. I started with Marlene. She lives in the next town over, the one with the good thrift store. Recently widowed, mouth like a sailor, heart like a lion. She came over on a Sunday when the kids were out, under the guise of decluttering my closet. Decluttering my ass, she said, shutting my bedroom door. What's really going on, Lil? You sounded like you were whispering through a hostage video when you called. So I told her about the trust, the allowance, the cameras, Ava's comment, the card decline. I watched her face change from concern to outrage to something sharp and almost gleeful. Oh, hell no, she said. You raised those 2 on mashed potatoes and second-hand clothes, and now they're trying to asset strip you like a hedge fund. Absolutely not. I'm not sure what I can do, I admitted. They've got the papers. The house is legally in their names now, or in the trust with them. As what you can do, she said, is talk to somebody who knows more about this than we do. She reached into her enormous purse and pulled out a business card. It was slightly bent, the way things get when they've been carried around for emergencies. Who's this? I asked. Ethan Ruiz, she said. Elder law. Helped my neighbor when her son tried to borrow her retirement for a cannabis startup. Let's just say he put the no in oh no you don't, the card said. Ruiz and McLaren, attorneys at law estate planning, elder protection, guardianship defense. There was a little logo that looked like a shield and a set of scales. I can't just call him, I said, heart pounding. Daniel checks my phone records now, says he's monitoring for scams. Then don't use your phone, Marlene said. Use mine, or the library's, or a carrier pigeon, but call him. I stared at the card, at the name. I thought of that $418,000 number. I thought of my house, my pension, my freedom all wrapped up in a legal bow and handed to children who talked about me like I was a broken appliance. Okay, I said. My voice surprised me. It sounded like it did when a patient started crashing and some intern's hands were shaking too much for the 4. That calm, take no prisoners tone. Okay, I repeated. Let's see what Mr. Ruiz can do. Getting to him was its own small heist. Marlene drove me to his office on a Wednesday under the excuse that we were going to the outlet mall. I left a note on the counter in case Claire dropped by. Gone shopping with Marlene. Don't worry. I have my phone. Love, Mom. I didn't bring my phone. You sure about this? Marlene asked as we sat outside the low brick building with the discreet sign. The law office looked exactly the way I'd expect a place that deals in secrets and wills would look: quiet, polite, and more dangerous than it seemed. Absolutely, I said. And if I chicken out, just remind me of Ava calling me a handful. That kid worships you, Marlene said. She's repeating what she hears. I know. My throat tightened. That's what scares me. The waiting room was small but tidy. A pleasant woman with gray streaks in her hair sat at the receptionist's desk typing. She looked up, smiled. Do you have an appointment? She asked. Under Lillian Harper, I said. My palms were sweating. I spoke with Mr. Ruiz yesterday, he said. Yes, Miss Harper, she said, and the miss alone almost made me sob with gratitude. He cleared an hour for you. Go on in. Ethan Ruiz was younger than I expected, mid-40s, maybe with dark hair and tired eyes. He stood when I walked in, shook my hand like it mattered. Mrs. Harper, he said. Or Miss Lillian, I said. But you can call me Lily if you end up saving my life. He smiled, but it faded as soon as I sat down and took the manila folder out of my bag. My notebook, the trust brochure with its lying beach couple, the printouts from the library. I stacked them carefully on his desk. My children say I'm declining, I began. They say all of this, I gestured to the papers, is for my safety. I'd like you to tell me if that's true. He looked at me, really looked. Not the way my kids look at me, a quick scan for problems, but the way I used to look at patients before I let a doctor anywhere near them. A full assessment. Okay, Lillian, he said quietly. Why don't you walk me through what happened? Every detail you remember. So I did. Starting with the family meeting, the protective bubble, the cameras, the allowance, the closed account, the $418,000 number, Ava's comment. I didn't cry. I'd done enough of that in the dark. This was not a crying room. This was a war room. He listened without interrupting, taking notes in a tight, neat hand. When I finished, he sat back, exhaled slowly, and picked up the trust document. Did you read this before you signed? He asked gently. Not really, I admitted. I read enough to know they'd chosen a very flattering stock photo. Did anyone explain it to you? A lawyer? A notary? Daniel said the lawyer had gone over it with him, I said. I got the highlights. For my safety. He flipped through, face growing more serious with every page. Finally, he closed it and looked at me. Lillian, he said, I'm going to be very honest with you. This document gives your children extremely broad control over your assets. The house, the pension, your savings. Technically, it's revocable, because it's a living trust. But, I asked. But, he said carefully, if they can convince a court that you were already experiencing cognitive decline when you signed this, they can argue that you're not competent to revoke it now, especially with the cameras, the doctor's notes, the fall. My stomach turned to ice. So I signed my own prison sentence, I said. Maybe, he said. Or maybe you signed the first piece of evidence in a very strong case for undue influence and financial exploitation. I blinked. Evidence? He tapped the document. They had you sign away almost everything. They're controlling access to your funds. They're isolating you, monitoring your movements, and minimizing your objections by framing you as confused or fragile. They've involved your doctor without your consent. His eyes met mine. If I were writing a training manual for elder abuse, this would be a case study. Training manual, I repeated slowly. Well, at least my misery is educational. He smiled faintly. You're not miserable. You're furious. That's different. And useful. Useful is good, I said. What can we do? He leaned forward. That depends. How far are you willing to go? I thought about my house, the garden Frank planted, the lemon tree Ava climbed last summer, our bedroom painted that ridiculous pale blue he loved. I thought about Daniel's hand on my pen, guiding my signature. Claire's soft voice saying, Is that what you want? I also thought about every woman I'd seen in the hospital who never fought back, who let their children bully them into nursing homes they hated, who signed papers they didn't understand because they were tired and the people hurting them were also the people tucking them in. I was tired too, but not that tired. All the way, I said. I'm willing to go all the way. Ethan nodded, like he'd hoped I'd say that. He opened a fresh file folder, wrote my name on the tab, and underlined it. Then, he said, a new sharpness in his voice, here's what we're going to do. And as he laid out the first steps, medical evaluations, forensic accounting, quietly gathering more documents, preparing in case my children tried to escalate, I felt something inside me crack open. Not fear, not grief, power. For the first time since that damn family meeting, I felt like I had my hands back on the steering wheel. When I stepped out of that office, the afternoon sun hit my face like a spotlight. Marlene was waiting in the car, knitting something purple and wild looking. Well? She asked, dropping the yarn into her lap. Does he wear a cape under that suit or what? He thinks we have a case, I said, sliding into the seat. Or several. She grinned. Oh, Lil, your kids picked the wrong old lady to mess with, apparently, I said, watching the law office shrink in the rearview mirror. They did. My phone, which I'd left at home on purpose, was probably buzzing itself into a seizure by now. I pictured the missed calls, the texts. Mom, where are you? Why didn't you answer? We were worried. I let myself enjoy that thought for a moment. Them worrying about me without information. Let them taste a little of the powerlessness they'd been feeding me for months. Next step, I said quietly, more to myself than to Marlene, is getting proof they never expected anyone to look for. Marlene patted my knee. And then, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face, I'm going to take back my house, my money, and my good name. And I'm going to make my children explain themselves in a room where lying has consequences. Marlene whistled low. Remind me never to get on your bad side, honey, I said, settling back as she pulled onto the road. People have been underestimating my bad side for years. I turned to watch my town roll by. The grocery store where my card had been declined, the pharmacy where they now called Claire for refills instead of me, the church steeples standing stubborn and bright against the sky. My life, my map of decades, the world they thought they could quietly evict me from. They'd told everyone this was for my safety. Soon enough, we'd see how safe they felt when a court clerk read their names out loud and a judge asked them why they're living, breathing, thinking mother had been treated like a broken lamp they'd put in storage. I could almost hear it already. The shuffle of feet, the clearing of throats, the word objection ringing sharp and clear. I smiled. Let them think I was declining. I was just getting started. 3 days after that first meeting with Ethan, my children made their first big mistake. They staged another family meeting. Only this time, I came prepared. Claire showed up with a clipboard. She's been in management too long. She thinks objects give her authority. Daniel had his laptop again, his modern security blanket. We've noticed some concerning behaviors lately, Claire began, pouring herself coffee without asking if I wanted any. You're going places without telling us, Mom. And you turned off the kitchen motion sensor yesterday. Dan got an alert. You got alerted that I turned off a thing in my own house? I asked mildly. It's not your house anymore, technically, Daniel said, then froze. There it was, the first crack. Oh, I said, tilting my head. Whose house is it, technically? It's in the trust, he said quickly. You know that, right? I said. The trust. For my safety. Claire shifted, suddenly uneasy. Mom, we're not trying to argue. We think we might need to talk to Dr. Keene about increasing your support. Maybe getting some in home care. In home care, I repeated. What? Someone to microwave my soup wrong and talk to me like I'm 5. I already have you to for that. See? Claire said to Daniel, ignoring me. This defensiveness is exactly what he was talking about. This is what abusers do. They narrate your reactions to each other like you're not there, as if your anger proves their point. I took a slow sip of tea. Let me ask you something, I said. If this house caught fire, who would the insurance check be written to? Daniel frowned. What does that have to do with who? I repeated, sharper. Whose name would be on the check? He sighed. The trust, Mom. You know that. So if I died, I went on, before this imaginary decline of mine became official, who would get my pension survivor benefits? That's complicated, Claire said, which meant us. But that sounds bad if I say it out loud. I nodded slowly. So my house is yours. My money is yours. My movements are monitored. My phone is watched. My doctor gets reports about me without my consent. And now you want someone in my home to help me put my shoes on. Mom, Claire said, switching to syrupy sad voice, you make it sound like we're the enemy. You're not the enemy, I said. You're just very, very confused about what love looks like. Her eyes filled with tears, not guilt, self-pity. Daniel stared at his laptop like he hoped it would open a portal to another universe. Look, he said finally, this is stressful for all of us. Maybe it's time to get a capacity evaluation, an independent one. Then we can see where things really stand. God bless him. He handed me the weapon himself. A capacity evaluation, I said. You mean one where a doctor tests whether my brain still works? It's standard for people your age, Claire said. If it shows you're fully competent, then you'll give me back my house and my money. I asked. Silence. Daniel cleared his throat. It would clarify things. Good, I said crisply. Schedule it. And send me the appointment information. I'll walk myself in. They both blinked. You're okay with this? Claire asked. I insist, I said. I'm eager to find out whether I've truly lost my marbles, or whether my children are just very good at gaslighting. Her mouth opened, closed. She didn't know that word had made it into the senior vocabulary. Gaslighting is emotional abuse, I added helpfully. Since you're so fond of psychological terms, that was the second crack. I called Ethan from the library payphone like a teenager calling her boyfriend in 1973. They want a capacity evaluation, I told him. Independent. Their word, not mine. He whistled softly. They really don't know who they're dealing with, do they? So I've been told, I said. What do we do? First, you go, he said. You show up rested, calm, and as sharp as you actually are. I'll fax the doctor a letter ahead of time letting him know you've retained counsel, and reminding him to document not just test results but the circumstances of the evaluation. What circumstances? Who brought you? He said. Who spoke for you? Who tried to answer questions directed at you? Judges love that kind of detail. I smiled. You sound like a man who's been to this rodeo before. Too many times, he said. Second, we subpoena your medical records, the trust file from Wexler and Tate, and full statements for every account linked to the trust. Can we do that already? I asked. Before I'm officially incompetent or competent or whatever label they're waiting on. You're still the grantor and primary beneficiary, he said. You still have rights. And since you've retained me, they can't say you're too compromised to hire counsel but somehow clear-headed enough to donate your entire life to their control. Poetic, I said. And third, he said, you keep doing exactly what you're doing. Write everything down. Save every text. Let them bury themselves in their own for your safety language. I thought of the notebook on my bedside table. Blessed, the cover said. Blessed, I murmured. They have no idea how blessed I feel right now. The capacity evaluation was held in a bland little office smelling of coffee and printer ink. Dr. Benson, a neurologist, wore a tie with saxophones on it and the expression of a man who had seen every shade of family dysfunction. Claire insisted on driving me. I can take myself, I'd said. We'll go together, she replied, like a nurse talking to a reluctant patient. Dan will meet us there. I let her. Part of me wanted Dr. Benson to see them in action. In the waiting room, she filled out forms with my name and her phone number. I watched. Emergency contact? The nurse asked. My daughter, I said. For now. They called my name. Claire rose with me. Family stays out here, the nurse said. Doctor's orders. Claire's mouth snapped shut like someone had pressed a button. Dr. Benson shook my hand firmly. Lillian, nice to meet you. I understand your kids are worried. They worry professionally now, I said. It's a full-time job. He chuckled, motioned for me to sit. I'm going to ask you to do some things that may seem silly. Draw shapes, remember words, that kind of thing. You understand what this evaluation is for. So my children can find out whether they're thieves or caregivers, I said. Apparently I'm the key variable. He studied me for a long beat. I see, he said. Let's begin. He asked me the date. I gave it to him, down to the year. Asked who the president was. I told him, along with the last three, partly to show off. He had me count backward by sevens. I did it while tapping out a waltz rhythm on my knee. Spell world backward, he said. I did. Then I gave him the French translation for free. His eyebrows climbed. He asked about my life. I told him where I grew up, when I'd married, how long I'd been a nurse, what year Frank died. I watched him jot notes when I gave specific dates without hesitating. At one point he asked gently, do you ever feel confused? Forget where you are? I walked into the pantry yesterday and forgot what I wanted, I said. But that happened when I was 22. I figure if that's dementia, I've been demented my whole life, he smiled. Do you ever hear or see things others don't? Only Fox News, I said. But I turn it off. He laughed out loud at that one, which I counted as extra credit. When we finished, he folded his hands. Lillian, he said carefully, I'm not allowed to give full test results on the spot, but I can tell you this. You are functioning cognitively far above the average for your age. I see no immediate red flags. You mean I'm not crazy, I said. I mean, he said, that if someone is telling you that you're not competent to make basic decisions, they're not basing that on your brain. Good, I said, because I thought I might have to haunt them, and I'd prefer to delay that pleasure. 3 weeks later, the first shot was fired. Claire and Daniel were served at home on a Saturday morning. Ethan timed it that way on purpose. They like Saturdays, he'd said. Less work to hide behind. I wasn't there obviously, but I got the play-by-play later from Ava, who has both her mother's observant eyes and my inability to keep interesting secrets. We were about to leave for brunch, she told me on the phone, and this guy in a suit knocked on the door. Mom thought he was selling something, but he said her name and handed her this big envelope. Then he did the same to Uncle Dan. How did they react? I asked, folding laundry like this was just idle gossip. Well, Uncle Dan got really red, she said. Mom just went totally quiet. She read the first page and said a bad word. Which word? I asked. For accuracy, Grandma, she giggled. The one you used when you broke that plate last Christmas. I said. That one. They'd been served with a petition for revocation of the Harper Family Revocable Living Trust due to undue influence, an order for full accounting of all trust assets and expenditures, temporary injunction freezing major transactions, and my personal favorite, a concurrent report to Adult Protective Services alleging financial exploitation and emotional abuse of a vulnerable adult. I am the vulnerable adult in question. I prefer furious adult, but the law likes its own vocabulary. The next text I got from Claire was at 11:17 am. Claire, Mom, what did you do? I considered, then replied, me, hired a lawyer. Turns out I'm still allowed to do that. It took her 10 minutes to type again. Claire, you're overreacting. You're letting some stranger turn you against your own children. Me, no darling, he's just the map. You and Daniel built the road. I sent a little gavel emoji for good measure. She didn't reply. Daniel called that night, voice tight with fury. How could you? He demanded. Dragging us into court? Calling APS on your own kids? Do you know what this could do to our reputations? Yes, I said. That's rather the point. You're confused. He snapped. This lawyer is just trying to scare you into giving him money. There's nothing illegal about what we've done. Then you'll have no trouble explaining it to the judge, I said. Assuming the forensic accountant agrees. Silence. Accountant? He repeated. Oh, didn't I mention? I asked lightly. Ethan's having someone look over the trust records. Little things like withdrawals, transfers, payments from my account to yours. I'm sure it's all entirely innocent. That new SUV of Claire's must have fallen from the sky. And your consulting project. What was it? Coding class for dogs. It was a startup opportunity, he hissed. And those were loans. Fantastic, I said. Then you'll have signed loan documents handy. Judges love documentation. He hung up on me. I held the dead phone to my ear for a second, then set it down gently. You okay? Marlene asked from the couch, where she'd been pretending to read while eavesdropping shamelessly. I'm wonderful, I said. They're finally scared. And how do you feel about that? She asked. I thought about it. Honestly, like I've been slowly suffocating for a year and somebody just cracked a window. Court moves slowly when you want it, fast when you want to stall. But Ethan knew which strings to pull. First came the emergency hearing on the injunction. We sat at a long wooden table under buzzing fluorescent lights. It wasn't a fancy courtroom, probate rarely is, but to me it felt like a stage where, finally, we were all reading from the same script. Claire and Daniel sat at the opposite table with an older man in an expensive suit, their lawyer, supplied by Wexler and Tate. Claire wore black, as if attending a funeral. Daniel had on a tie I'd given him for Father's Day 10 years ago, which struck me as emotional bribery. When the clerk called, in the matter of Harper v. Harper, my stomach flipped. I never imagined I'd see my name that way against my own children. The judge was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and the kind of eyes that had seen every trick in the book. Her nameplate said Hon. Margaret Doyle. I liked her immediately. Ethan started, laying out our request, that all major transactions be frozen until the court could determine whether the trust reflected my free will or my children's pressure. He introduced the capacity assessment from Dr. Benson. The judge skimmed it, her eyebrows lifting slightly. So Dr. Benson says your client is fully oriented, above average cognitive functioning for age, no evidence of dementia or significant impairment, she said. Yet the trust was executed, 10 months ago? Correct, Your Honor, Ethan said. And since then, Miss Harper has seen increasing isolation, loss of control over her finances, and monitoring of her movements under the guise of safety. The opposing lawyer, Mr. Silktie, stood. Your Honor, with respect, this is a family matter. My clients have acted only out of concern. The trust is entirely legal. Legal isn't the same as ethical, I muttered. Ethan touched my elbow, a silent hush, but I saw the corner of Judge Doyle's mouth twitch. Mr. Silktie continued. Their mother has shown signs of confusion, repeated herself fallen. They consulted with a reputable elder law firm, your firm, the judge noted dryly, to set up a structure that would protect her from scams and mismanagement. There is no evidence of exploitation. Ethan stood again. Your Honor, may I direct the court to Exhibit D? He clicked something on his laptop. The screen on the evidence projector lit up with a spreadsheet, numbers marching neatly across cells. This is the preliminary forensic review of the trust account, he said. In the past 10 months, over $73,000 has been transferred from Miss Harper's pension and savings into accounts owned solely by her son, Daniel, and daughter Claire. Loans, Daniel blurted. Objection, his lawyer began. Relax, counselor, Judge Doyle said. It's his reputation. Sit down. Ethan nodded. They are labeled as family support and reimbursement. There are no underlying invoices or loan documents. There are, however, corresponding purchases, a new vehicle in Miss Claire's name and a $15,000 capital contribution to a failed business venture called, he squinted, Dogcode LLC. Silence thickened the room. Even the court reporter paused. Dogcode? The judge asked. It was an app idea, Daniel muttered. For tracking, I don't need the pitch, she said. I just need to know who paid for it. Ethan gestured toward me. She did, Your Honor. Without her knowledge or consent, using a trust document she signed after being told it was for her safety. The judge turned to me. Miss Harper, she said, voice softer. Did you know about these transfers? I stood slowly, because my knees still remember every night shift, and faced her. No, Your Honor, I said clearly. I didn't know. I knew I'd signed something to make things easier. I didn't know I was financing an SUV and a dog app. Mr. Silktie stood again. Your Honor, these are intra-family arrangements. It's common for parents to help adult children financially. Parents can give gifts, the judge interrupted. What they can't do is be deprived of necessities or autonomy under false pretenses. I'll tell you what concerns me more than the money, counsel. She looked over her glasses at Claire and Daniel. Your mother is in my courtroom asking for her rights back, she said. She's articulate. She's informed. She has independent counsel. And instead of expressing relief that she's been found competent, you're fighting to keep control. Claire's lips trembled. Daniel stared straight ahead. Motion for temporary injunction is granted, Judge Doyle said, banging her gavel lightly. All major transactions from the trust are frozen pending full hearing. In the meantime, Miss Harper is to be restored as a co-signatory on a day-to-day spending account of her choosing, with a monthly stipend not to fall below her pre-trust discretionary spending. What does that mean? I whispered to Ethan. It means, he murmured back, you get your debit card back. I sat down. For the first time in months, I felt something like my old self, the charge nurse who could order a junior doctor to sit down and shut up while she saved his patient. This was only the beginning, but beginnings matter. The fallout at home was volcanic. Claire arrived unannounced that evening, red-eyed and shaking. How could you humiliate us like that? She demanded, throwing her purse onto my couch. Freezing our accounts? In front of a judge? Freezing my accounts, I corrected. You and your brother can still do whatever you like with your own money. She laughed, high-pitched and ugly. What money, Mom? We've been paying for your groceries, your meds. Using my funds, I said, standing slowly. Stop saying we paid for things when the receipts say otherwise. Her nostrils flared. You wanted us to help, no, I said. You wanted control. There's a difference. I gave up so much for you, she whispered. Do you know how hard it is? Taking care of you and the kids and work. People praise me for being such a good daughter, and now you're going to take that away? There it was, the heart of it, not love, image. I didn't ask you to martyr yourself in my name, Claire, I said. And if people praise you for taking care of me, maybe try actually doing that instead of managing me like an asset. She sank onto the chair, shaking. You're turning into one of those bitter old women on TV court shows, she said, suing your own kids. Do you know how pathetic that looks? Pathetic, I said, is letting your children treat you like a broken appliance. This is something else. She stared at me, really stared, like she hadn't seen me in a long time. You're different, she said quietly. You sound mean. I sound like myself, I said. The woman I was before I let grief and fear make me small. You just got used to the smaller version. She stood abruptly. Fine, if this is how you want it, but don't expect us to keep helping. I won't, I said. Help should never come with handcuffs. At the door she turned back, tears streaking her mascara. You're going to regret this. Maybe, I said, but at least the regrets will be mine. When the door shut, I locked it. Then I walked to the little control panel Daniel installed and turned off the cameras. The house exhaled. The months leading up to the full hearing were a strange limbo. On paper, I was mid-litigation. In practice, I was rebuilding my life brick by brick. Ethan's forensic accountant found more, small but frequent charges that had nothing to do with me: streaming subscriptions, meal deliveries to addresses I'd never been to, airline tickets in Daniel's name. It wasn't outright theft on the scale you see in movies. It was death by 1,000 swipes. I'm amazed at the entitlement here, Ethan said during one meeting, tapping a highlighted line. Most kids try to hide this stuff. Yours labeled one transfer thanks, Mom, in the memo line. They always did like my wallet, I said dryly. When they were 4, at least they said please. Adult Protective Services sent a social worker, a brisk woman named Rennie, to do a home visit. I half expected someone patronizing, but she was sharp and direct. I see this a lot, she said, looking around my tidy living room. The cameras, the for your safety story. Families don't even realize they're using the language of care to cover control. Do they ever win? I asked. The parents? Sometimes, she said. Depends if they have someone like you, old and angry. I asked. Organized, she said, nodding at my notebook, and not afraid of losing their kids' approval. That one landed like a stone and a truth at the same time. I did lose things. Sunday dinners stopped. Daniel dropped off the face of the earth except when forced to appear through lawyers. I saw Ava less. Claire claimed she didn't want her caught in the middle. I missed my granddaughter so fiercely it felt like a separate grief, jagged and fresh. But even that pain sat differently now. It sat next to my new sense of self like a bruise beside a healing scar. You're grieving to fantasies, Marlene said one night as we drank cheap wine on my porch. The fantasy that your kids were better than this, and the fantasy that you had to accept whatever they did because they were all you had. You sound like a therapist, I said. I read it on a meme, she admitted, but it fits. To fill the silence, I started volunteering at the senior center. I taught a class called Badass Boundaries for the over 60 crowd. We sat in a circle, white hair, implants, walkers, a few canes, raising hell when I said something they liked, and I told them my story. Not all the legal details, but enough. How many of you have signed something you didn't fully understand because a family member said it was for your safety? I asked. Hands went up. Too many. We practiced saying things like, no, I'll have my own copy and my own lawyer look at it. I appreciate your concern, but this is my decision. I won't tolerate being spoken to like a child. One woman, tiny and bird-like, whispered. My son says if I don't do what he says, he'll put me in a home. And what do you say? I asked. She looked at me, eyes moist. I say, we'll see what my lawyer thinks. The group cheered. If my case accomplished nothing else, at least it filled a room with older women practicing good lines. The day of the full hearing, I wore my best navy dress and the pearl earrings Frank gave me on our 20th anniversary. Armor, Marlene said, fastening the clasp. You look like you're about to fire someone. I am, I said. 2 someones. The courtroom was more crowded this time. APS had representatives there. So did Wexler and Tate. Dr. Benson sat on a bench near the front, papers in hand. A few curious strangers lingered in the back. Family court draws its own strange audience. Judge Doyle nodded at me as I took my seat. We are here on the matter of the validity and administration of the Harper Family Revocable Living Trust, she said. Miss Harper, are you ready? I've been ready for a year, Your Honor, I said. Ethan called me first. Lillian, he said, standing a respectful distance. Why did you sign the trust documents originally? Because my children scared me, I said. They said if I didn't, the state could take over, that strangers might make decisions for me. They said it was for my safety. They didn't mention that it would make them my bankers, landlords, and parole officers. How did your life change after signing? He asked. I told the court about the cameras, the allowance, the closed bank account, the intercepted mail, the monitored movements, the way they talked over me at doctor's appointments, the way they described me to others as confused and declining. Did they ever ask your permission before making financial decisions on your behalf? He asked. No, I said. They told me. Did you feel free to say no? I looked at my children across the room. Claire was gripping her lawyer's arm. Daniel stared at the table. I said slowly, like a dog on an invisible fence. I could walk around, but the minute I tried to cross a line they'd drawn, I got zapped. A faint smile flickered in Judge Doyle's eyes. The court reporter typed, "Zapped." "Why did you hire me?" Ethan asked. "Because I realized they had taken my house, my savings, and my name," I said. "They were telling a story about me to my doctor, to my friends, to my granddaughter that made me smaller and sicker than I am. I decided I'd rather be alone and free than loved for a lie." Mr. Silktie cross-examined. "Miss Harper," he said, "isn't it true you've had memory lapses?" "I once forgot where I put my keys," I said. "I also once forgot my own husband's anniversary gift." Neither prompted a coup. Laughter rippled through the room. Even the judge's shoulders shook slightly. "Isn't it true," he pressed, "that you fell in the garden?" "Yes," I said. "The host tried to kill me. We've made our peace." His mouth tightened. "You admit you made a mistake with a telemarketer. I hung up on him," I said. "The only mistake was telling my daughter about it and giving her ideas." "You don't think your children had any legitimate concerns?" he asked. I said, "that concern is what you feel. Control is what you do." They behaved like people more interested in control than in my actual well-being. He tried a different tack. "Your son says you were spending impulsively, booking trips, buying things you didn't need." "I worked 40 years wiping other people's behinds," I said. "If I decide to buy myself a new recliner and a bus ticket to Savannah, that's not impulsive. That's called using my own money for my own life." "Yes, but if they were worried about the money lasting," I interrupted, "they could have started by not using it on their own hobbies." "Miss Harper, please let counsel finish," Judge Doyle said, but she didn't sound upset. Ethan called Dr. Benson next. He testified calmly that there was no clinical reason to strip me of financial autonomy. He pointed out that the notes from Dr. Keene, my regular physician, had been heavily influenced by collateral reports from my children. "In layman's terms," he said, "if you keep telling a doctor someone is confused, he starts looking for confusion." Then came the social worker from APS. She spoke about patterns, isolation, monitoring, control of finances, framing resistance as illness. "In Miss Harper's case," she said, "we see a high-functioning older adult whose narrative about her capabilities is at odds with her children's narrative. We see financial decisions that benefit the children more than the parent. That combination raises significant red flags." Finally, Ethan called the forensic accountant, who walked the court through charts showing the flow of money. He didn't accuse. He just pointed. "Here is Miss Harper's pension," he said. "Here it is entering the trust account. Here it is leaving the trust account to pay Miss Claire's credit card. Here it is again, paying Mr. Daniel's business expenses. There are no equivalent deposits reflecting repayment." Mr. Silktie tried to spin it as support, generosity, family solidarity. "But numbers don't care about your narrative." Then it was their turn. Claire testified first. Her voice shook as she spoke about caring for a declining parent, about her terror of finding me on the floor, about online scammers and elder abuse headlines. She painted herself as the hero in a one-woman tragedy. "I gave up so much," she said. "My time, my energy, my money." Judge Doyle held up a hand. "We've heard where the money came from, Miss Harper. Please stick to your actions, not your sacrifices." Daniel talked about responsibility, about how someone had to step up. He mentioned Aunt Judy's probate mess 3 times, as if repetition would conjure a moral halo. Ethan's cross-examination was surgical. "You say this was all for your mother's safety," he said. "Did you ever consider appointing a neutral third-party trustee instead of yourselves?" "That would have cost money," Daniel said. "Whose?" Ethan asked. "Yours or hers?" "Mom's," he admitted. "So you saved her money by putting yourselves in a position to use it." No answer. "You say she was confused," Ethan went on. "Can you point to any documented test, before the trust was signed, that shows cognitive impairment?" Silence. "Any written recommendation from a physician that she was incapable of managing her own affairs at that time?" More silence. Claire shifted in her seat. "You say you were afraid of her falling," Ethan said. "Yet you closed her personal checking account without notice, leaving her card declined at the pharmacy. Is that correct?" "We set up an allowance," Daniel said defensively. "We didn't want her overspending, and when she wanted to visit a friend out of town," Ethan said, "you restricted her transportation app from going beyond a certain radius." That was for her safety. Did you consult her about that limitation? He looked trapped. We knew she'd argue. So, Ethan said calmly, you believed you knew better than a competent adult how much money she needed, where she should go, who she should see, and what she should know about her own finances. He let that hang in the air. That's not caring for someone, he finished quietly. That's managing them. Claire started crying. Daniel looked like he wanted to punch something. I felt a flicker of pity, quickly doused by the memory of my decline card and my granddaughter's words. They have to keep you at home or people might think they're bad children. Now people could draw their own conclusions. When closing arguments ended, Judge Doyle took a recess. We waited in the hallway, the air buzzing with quiet conversations. I could feel Claire's gaze burning into the side of my head, but I didn't turn. A woman in a floral dress approached tentatively. Miss Harper, she said, I wanted to say thank you. For what? I asked, genuinely puzzled. For fighting, she said. My brother did something similar with our mother's house. She never took it to court. I wish she had. I squeezed her hand. Maybe you'll tell her my story, I said, even if it's a little embellished. I don't mind sounding more glamorous in other people's versions. She laughed, eyes wet. I will. We were called back in. Judge Doyle shuffled her papers, looked over the tops of her glasses, and began. This is an unfortunate case, she said, but not a unique one. Adult children assuming that because their parents have aged, they are entitled morally or legally to take control. She recapped the facts, the trust, the lack of prior cognitive testing, the unrestricted power given to my children, the financial transfers, the monitoring, the isolation, the conflicting stories about my abilities. Here's what I see, she said, voice clear and steady. I see a 67-year-old woman who has spent her life working and now wishes to live with dignity and autonomy. I see adult children who may have begun with genuine concern but allowed that concern to morph into control and self-interest. She turned to Claire and Daniel. Being a good child, she said, does not mean managing your parent like a project. It does not mean deciding which freedoms they no longer deserve. And it absolutely does not mean using their assets as your safety net while framing them as fragile to justify it. Claire's shoulders shook. Daniel stared at the floor. As to the legal questions, Judge Doyle continued, I find that the trust, while properly executed on its face, was the product of undue influence. The circumstances, the pressure, the lack of independent counsel from Miss Harper, the misinformation about state interference undermined the voluntariness required. She lifted her gavel slightly. Accordingly, the trust is revoked. Title to the residence at 412 Maple Lane is restored solely to Miss Lillian May Harper. Control of her pension and savings reverts to her, with a full accounting of all transactions during the trust period to be provided within 30 days. My knees nearly gave out. Ethan's hand closed around my arm, steadying. Furthermore, Judge Doyle said, the unexplained transfers from Miss Harper's assets to her children raise serious concerns. I am referring this matter to Adult Protective Services and, if they deem appropriate, to the District Attorney's Office for potential investigation of financial exploitation. Mr. Silk Tie started to object. She held up a hand. I am not making a criminal finding today, she said, but I am placing this family on notice. What happened here is not just a misunderstanding. It is part of a larger pattern this court will no longer gloss over with phrases like it's just family. Finally, she turned back to me. Miss Harper, she said, and her voice softened. Do you understand that this means you are once again fully responsible for your own affairs? I do, Your Honor, I said. I've been ready. Do you wish your children to continue acting in any financial capacity for you? Power of attorney, co-signatories, anything of that sort. I looked at Claire and Daniel. For a moment, a ghost of the toddlers they'd been flickered over them, the way Daniel used to clutch his stuffed bear, the way Claire hid behind my knee when strangers smiled at her. Then it was gone. No, Your Honor, I said. Not at this time. She nodded. Very well. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. A simple sound, but for me it might as well have been a trumpet. The world didn't magically become a Hallmark movie after that. Life rarely obliges with neat bows, but it changed. The deed to my house was recorded in my name. I went down to the county office myself, wearing lipstick and my I am not dead yet t-shirt under a sensible cardigan. The clerk smiled when she handed me the certified copy. Congratulations, she said. Thank you, I replied. I redecorate with lawsuits now. The cameras came down. Marlene and I made an afternoon of it, unscrewing little plastic eyes and dropping them into a cardboard box labeled Evidence Tech Trash. Feels like an exorcism, Marlene said, yanking the last one off the back porch. I opened a new bank account at a different bank, one with a nice young man named Jerome who treated me like a human being and not a confused toddler. If anyone ever calls claiming to be a relative wanting access, I told him, you tell them this old lady will haunt their dreams. He laughed nervously. I smiled sweetly. Adult Protective Services did pursue their investigation. I received a letter months later informing me that substantiated concerns of financial exploitation had been found, and that the matter had been referred for prosecutorial review. I don't know yet what will come of that. I don't need prison stripes to feel like consequences have landed. Sometimes public records and whispers do more damage than handcuffs. What mattered more to me was the shift in power. Claire sent a long email a few weeks after the ruling. It began with justification, how hard her life was, how much she'd done, how ungrateful I was. It slid into apology, though she never quite used the word sorry without cushioning it. I'm sorry you feel. The oldest non-apology in the book, it ended with a plea. Can we please just go back to how things were before lawyers got involved? I read it twice. Then I replied, no, we cannot go back. There is no before where you did not try to own my life. If you want a relationship with me going forward, here are my conditions. 1. You acknowledge, in writing, that what you did was wrong and harmful, even if you meant well. 2. You understand that you will not handle my finances, my medical decisions, or my living arrangements unless I explicitly ask you to, and even then, only with clear documentation. 3. You speak about me truthfully to others, not as declining or confused, but as I am. Aging, yes. Opinionated, definitely. Still in charge. 4. You accept that no is a complete sentence when it comes from me. If you can't agree to these terms, I wish you well from a distance. I would rather be lonely than controlled. Love, Mom. It took her 2 weeks to respond. When she did, it was shorter. I need time, she wrote, but I hear you, and I'm trying to understand. See, it wasn't redemption, but it wasn't denial either. That was new. Daniel never emailed. He texted once. Daniel, APS called. Thanks for that. Me. You're welcome. You gave them plenty to work with. Silence after that. Maybe he'll come around. Maybe he won't. My heart is open to reconciliation but closed to manipulation. It's a new configuration. I'm still getting used to it. Ava, though my sweet, sharp-eyed granddaughter showed up on my porch one afternoon with a backpack and a determined expression. Mom thinks I'm at Emma's, she said. I turned off location services. Don't tell. I am suddenly involved in a conspiracy, I said. I approve. She sank onto the couch, twisting a bracelet around her wrist. Is it true? She asked. What Mom and Uncle Dan did? Yes, I said. And also no, it's true that they took my money and control. It's less true that they woke up and thought, let's hurt Mom. People can do bad things while telling themselves good stories. Mom says you hate them now, she whispered. I considered. No, I said. I hate what they did. I hate the way they talked about me like I'd already left the room forever. But hate is heavy. I'm too old to haul it around. What do you feel then? She asked. Clear, I said. I feel clear. She nodded slowly. I heard Mom on the phone with Aunt Jenna, she confessed. She said you were turning everyone against her. I snorted. If the truth turns people against you, that's not the truth's fault. She smiled a little. I missed you, she said. Even when Mom said you were confused, I didn't really believe it. You got all my Taylor Swift references last summer. Grandpa never could. Well, your grandfather thought Bianca was a brand of perfume, I said. So the bar was low. She laughed out loud, the sound lighting up my living room. Listen to me, Ava, I said, leaning forward. You are allowed to love your mother and also disagree with her. You are allowed to visit me even if she frowns on it. You are allowed to ask questions when grown-ups do things that don't feel right. She bit her lip. Mom says family loyalty means loyalty doesn't mean silence. I interrupted gently. It means wanting the people you love to be better, not just comfortable. She sat with that for a minute. Then she said, can we bake cookies? And maybe you can show me that notebook where you wrote everything down. For research. I smiled. Absolutely, I said. I'm raising a future whistleblower. I'm very proud. My life now is not the peaceful retirement I once pictured. It's better, in a crooked way. Yes, I still have arthritis. My hip still predicts the rain better than the weather app. I still put the milk in the pantry sometimes and swear at myself. I still miss Frank so much some nights it feels like an extra presence in the room. But I also have a house that is mine, in deed and in spirit. A bank card that works when I choose to buy something frivolous. A porch free of cameras where I can dance badly to Motown without generating a movement alert. A reputation at church not as poor confused Lillian, but as Lillian who took her kids to court and lived to tell the tale. Do you know how many old women have whispered to me in hallways, in parking lots, in bathroom lines? My son keeps my checkbook. I'm not even allowed to buy gifts without asking. My daughter moved into my house temporarily and now won't leave. My niece says I'm too sweet to understand paperwork. I tell them all the same thing. You're not a burden. You are the reason half these people are alive and fed and educated. You don't owe anyone your house, your savings, or your silence in exchange for not being left alone. And because I know fear is a stubborn thing, I also tell them this. Yes, they might get mad if you stand up for yourself. They might call you selfish, senile, ungrateful. Let them. Better to be called names in anger than erased in the name of safety. Marlene and I still go to the library. We've started leaving little notes in the senior section of self-help books. On a sticky note inside Caring for Aging Parents, I wrote, if you are the parent being cared for, read contracts twice. Then call a lawyer who doesn't share your last name. In the large print Bible, tucked near Proverbs, Marlene left, even God gave people free will. Don't let your children claim a power he never took. Is it petty? Maybe. Does it make us cackle like teenagers? Absolutely. Sometimes late at night, I walk through my house and touch the walls. This is the hallway where Daniel ran his toy cars until the paint chipped. This is the kitchen where Claire tried to make pancakes and set a dish towel on fire. This is the bedroom where Frank snored like a chainsaw and insisted it was just breathing with enthusiasm. For a while, this house felt like a cage. The deed with my children's names on it sat like a weight on every shelf. The cameras made me feel watched in my own skin. Now, with the papers corrected and the plastic eyes gone, it's something else again. It's mine. Not because a judge said so, though that helped, but because I claimed it. My freedom didn't arrive in a single dramatic moment. It came in layers. The first time I told Claire, no, you may not look at my mail. The first time I walked to the drugstore alone, my own card in my pocket, and bought something stupid just because I wanted it. It was a bright red lipstick. The cashier called it bold. I said, at my age, there's no point in being beige. The first time I taught another woman how to say, that doesn't work for me without apologizing afterward. Reclaiming dignity, it turns out, is less about what you win in court and more about what you refuse to lose inside yourself. One afternoon, months after the hearing, I was sitting on my porch with a cup of tea when a neighbor's daughter stopped by. She's in her 30s, the age my kids were when they still thought I knew everything. Miss Harper, she said shyly, I heard what happened. My brothers keep telling my mom she can't live alone anymore. She's only 62. I don't know what to do. I looked at her, at the worry in her forehead, at the way she twisted her ring. Here's what you do, I said. You sit with your mother. You ask her what she wants. You listen. And then, if what she wants doesn't match what your brothers want, you say, I'm on mom's side, even if they roll their eyes. Even if they say you're being naive. She swallowed. Won't they be mad at me? Probably, I said. But you'll be able to live with yourself. They'll have to live with being the kind of men who try to bulldoze their own mother. That's their burden. She let out a breath, like she'd been holding it for months. You're brave, she said. I smiled. No, honey, I'm cheap. She blinked. Cheap? I spent my whole life paying for other people's comfort, I said. I'm done. I don't give discounts on my dignity anymore. She laughed, a surprised little burst. Then she wiped her eyes and went home. If you're listening to this, maybe you're where I was, sitting in a house that doesn't feel like yours anymore, being spoken to like you're already gone, told that giving up control is for your safety. Maybe your children are better than mine in some ways, worse in others. Maybe they're saints with blind spots. Maybe they're selfish with charming smiles. Maybe they're both. Most people are. Here's what I know, from the far side of my own little war. You are allowed to want peace and still choose a fight. You are allowed to love your children and still say, no more. You are allowed to be old and strong at the same time. The world keeps acting like those words cancel each other out. They don't. They fit together like jaw and bite. If your body is slowing but your mind is sharp, don't let anyone narrate you into oblivion. If your mind is foggier than it once was, you still deserve respect, options, and truth. Cognitive decline is not a moral failure. Exploitation is. Ask questions. Demand explanations. Put things in writing. Get your own lawyer. Turn on your recorder. Call APS if you need to. Tell your pastor, your hairdresser, your book club. Shine light in every corner they'd prefer stayed dim. And if they say, you're ruining the family, remember, they cracked it when they chose control over respect. You're just refusing to grout their mess with silence. As for me, I'm 67. I drink my tea on the porch most mornings now. Sometimes my grandchildren run through the yard. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's just me and Marlene and a squirrel I've named Gerald who disrespects my flower beds. My old age is not peaceful in the way I imagined. It's something fiercer, more honest. It has less tiptoeing and more cackling, fewer apologies, more boundaries. There is still pain, of course there is, but pain with dignity is easier to bear than comfort with shame. My name is Lillian. Lily, if we're being friendly. Once, my children made my home into my prison and called it protection. Now, my home is what it was always meant to be, a place I choose, a place I own, a place I can walk out of any time I damn well please. They said it was for my safety. They lied. I believed them for a while. I don't anymore. And that, more than any court order, is how I got my freedom back.